All right, we're going to get started very quickly. So, thank you, sir. How are you?
Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Remember me?
You attract a few people.
I know.
when you do things like this.
I can't help it.
I love it. This is great. This really is.
You were great on CNN the other day.
Well, thank you.
How do you feel about it?
That?
Everything.
I mean, we're just going to keep fighting. I don't know what to say. You know, I gotta do what we have to do. I don't like where we are, but
I need you to get him some new glasses.
Oh, yeah, I know. It just broke. It just broke.
The mayor's here.
Okay, great. All right, if we could all get seated, that'd be great. We're going to get started. Thank you.
exactly.
Arnie twice in 1 week, man.
Okay. So we'll start down there. Cool. And I promise I'm going to take about 10-15 minutes to 20-minute term.
That's all right.
I'll introduce you guys.
Cool. Great.
I didn't use it. Really? Well, I was talking to Chris. He's like, no. He's like, just scared of it. And
I'll talk to you about Gene.
Good afternoon, everybody. We clearly underestimated the crowd, so I apologize to those that are standing in a larger room next time. And try quickly to say one thing personally. My mother passed yesterday. She's the reason I do this work, and so if I'm a little bit raw today, I apologize. Please give me a little bit of grace to get through this. We're obviously coming off an extraordinarily tough weekend. Gun violence, I think, is a cancer that's destroying the soul of our city. If we're honest with ourselves, our collective response has clearly been wildly inadequate. When you have over 100 shot on a weekend, 17 dead, none of us can say that we're doing enough together. And we have to hold ourselves accountable for doing something much better for our city, but very specifically for our children on the south and west sides. The loss, the heartbreak, the trauma is incalculable, but the financial cost of courts and hospitals and funerals and legal and everything else, prisons, is in the billions. And so this is something that as a city, as a state, we have to come together to change in a very fundamental way. And having a room like this during a very dark time actually gives me a lot of hope of what we can try and do together. And I'll just take one quick minute just sort of walk you through what I saw and what I felt this weekend, because for me it gave a real sense both of the horrible trauma of our city, but also the extraordinary hope and inspiration of our city. And if you do this work, you get to see both the best and the worst of humanity. So I'll try and do this very, very quickly. On Thursday, we hosted 6 community events, 4 on the west side, North Lawndale, 2 on the south side. We always say at Chicago Credit, we work so that children could play. We try and do our community events on hot blocks to calm things down, build our license to operate, our LTO, and give kids a chance to come out and be safe. And those, knock on wood, went extraordinarily well. We were very, very grateful for the community support and for the guys in the community, granting us grace and giving us a chance to let kids play. That was Thursday. Friday, unfortunately, we had to go visit with lots of our partners across the CVI community, go visit the family at 71st and Woodlawn. And I can only describe what happened there as a massacre. To have 2 moms and a young baby killed, to have 2 other babies in critical, talking to one of the fathers who works the night shift. He was working from 12 at night to 8 in the morning. I think very few of us in this room have to work night shifts, but that's what he does to put food on his family's table, and get a call at 7 in the morning at the end of his shift. His child's not wrong place, wrong time. His child's asleep in his house. To get a call that his little baby is killed is something I'll never forget. 2 of the young men there happen to be basketball players. One's trying to go to college. One's a very talented 8th grader, state ranked. And to hear them talk about what they want to try and do in honor of their mother's memory is something that I'll never forget. Leaving there, went to the near west side, and I texted the governor about this. Thanks to his and the state support, all of our state legislative leaders here, we've been putting in place the FLIP program, which is a piece of the strategy. 2 neighborhoods that have been at war for a while, been able to hire guys through the FLIP program on both sides of that conflict, visited 2 of the spots, and 3 months does not make a trend, but in the past 3 months there's been a 50% reduction in violence. And to see the pride that both sides of that conflict took in those numbers coming down, and there's still work to go, it's still too much violence, but to see how happy they were, and again to see kids out there playing, coming after the visit of 71st and Woodlawn, gave me a sort of a sense of what's possible if we really empower those who are closest to the problem to actually be the solution. They're not the problem, they are the solution. Saturday, very ironically and tragically, one of the young men in our program was going to meet with his opposition. He knew what was going on the weekend to try and make peace, and very tragically, he got shot as he went to have that meeting. Thankfully, he survived. He's not in great shape, but he's going to make it. And visiting him Sunday at the Hospital of Christ Advocate was unbelievable. He was speaking sort of in a whisper. You could barely hear him, but he kept saying, "I'm okay. I got to have peace. Go talk to the guys on the block. Let them know." He knew who shot him. The guy looked him in the eye and knows exactly who did it. He does not want to retaliate. He does not want retaliation. He said, just leave and go talk to the guys on the block. And so I just want to give you guys a sense of that's our reality. It is traumatic. It is difficult. But the guys in these battles want something better for themselves. They want something different. And we got to walk with them and learn from them and empower them and give them a chance to do exactly that. There are a couple things I'm convinced we have to do. We have to teach people how to de-escalate conflict. The smallest conflicts end up becoming lethal, and that's a skill that can be learned, can be taught. It's what many of us try and do every single day, but we're nowhere near at scale in doing that. We have to help people heal from trauma, and I can't overstate how important that is. We've had too many young kids. We had a 16-year-old kill a 7-year-old recently, and I know the trauma that happened in his family. I don't know the situation. We had another 16-year-old kill a retired police officer. How old was he? Do you know?
60 and 70.
73? Yeah,
73.
73. So 16-year-old killed a 73-year-old. I don't know that story, but something's going on there. And I have no insider knowledge. This is the police chief's job, and he's doing an extraordinary job. But if we solve what happened at 71st and Woodlawn, I wouldn't be surprised at all if that's another 14 or 15 or 16-year-old dealing with recent trauma and handling it in exactly the wrong way. So helping people heal from trauma is critical. And then finally, we have to continue to put in place non-aggression agreements and peace treaties. And the kind of stuff for all the violence we saw in the city, where we had peace treaties hold, non-aggression agreements hold, what we saw on the near west side, something that's very fresh, still raw. That's the way we're going to get to a safer city. That's our collective work together. And we have a chance to do all of this together. A couple of thanks, and I'll be quiet. We have a number of speakers. I've taken too much time, and I apologize for that. First, I'm just incredibly honored to be here at sort of Jim Crown's office and having the business community step up, to have folks continue this work in his honor. His last public appearance was actually talking about this at the City Club of Chicago with me and a few other folks 2 weeks before he tragically passed. But to see not just his family, to see the entire civic community rally behind his vision and keep this going and double down, I can't tell you how much that means to me. Secondly, just having these public-private partnerships. This work does nothing if it doesn't humble you. None of us can do this by ourselves, but having leaders across public and private sector come together, we all have a piece to play. If we can play it smarter and more effectively and more collaboratively, we have a chance to do something that's never happened in the history of the city. And finally, I always say that public safety is a public good, and we need private sector innovation to pilot some things and do some risky things, but if the data proves they're effective, we need the public sector to scale. And to have the governor and so many legislative leaders here who have taken this to heart, who have followed the data and have invested heavily in what's working to start to take it to scale, gives us a chance to do something. The final thing I'll say is that we're trying to do in Chicago what no other city has done. Violence is acutely bad here in Chicago, but it is not unique to Chicago. We need two things. We need very effective policing, and I want to thank the mayor. In my humble opinion, he picked absolutely the right person to lead the police department to help them increase effectiveness. That's a tough, tough job. That's a long way to go, but I have unbelievable confidence in this man to do that work. And we need to scale the private sector CVI work together. And in no community are we at scale. We started this work in North Lawndale. We thought we were doing a pretty good job. We were serving about 200 men. Got back to stats that over 1,250 were acutely at risk of shooting or being shot. We weren't even in the game. We weren't at 20%. We can't do it by ourselves. We're working with partners to start to scale 500, 600, 700 men there, in Humboldt Park, in Austin as we move forward. We have a chance to do what has never happened anywhere in the country, let alone Chicago. So I don't want to blow through it. This is a very dark and difficult and challenging time. This weekend is about as horrific as we can get. But with that reality, for me, it just redoubles our collective commitment to try and get us to a better place. If we can stay the course over the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think we have a chance to do something that's never been done and make history, not just for the city, but for the country. Let me be quiet. Thank you for indulging me for a minute there. And we're going to have a number of speakers come up. Let me bring up Esther Franco-Payne, who's doing an amazing job as the Executive Director of the Partnership for Safe and Peaceful Communities. She'll update you on our SC2 effort, our effort to scale this work to 7 communities, starting, as I talked about, in North Lawndale, and try and reach a critical mass of the communities in the city that desperately need these kinds of resources. Esther.
Thank you so much, Arne. Thank you to Governor Pritzker, Mayor Brandon Johnson, members of the legislature, city and county officials, and most importantly, our community partners. We appreciate your support, and we thank you for your partnership. As Arne said, we cannot do this without collaboration and partnership, and we thank you for believing in this work. Esther Franco-Payne again, the Executive Director with the Partnership for Safe and Peaceful Communities. And the partnership, also known as PSPC, came together 8 years ago. 8 years ago today, we have been working on this and doing this work diligently, and our goal is to continue and to keep grounded in what we have been doing. Focused on a multi-part agenda, we began building a network of organizations to directly reduce gun violence and to build evidence of their effectiveness. Some of our researchers are here in the room, and we thank you for joining us. 8 years later, we are now part of a coalition unlike anything we have seen in Chicago or across the country. We have philanthropy, business, government, community, all united in this mission to reduce gun violence. More recently, PSPC, in partnership with the business community, has embarked upon an unprecedented effort to invest deeply in communities that are most impacted by gun violence. This initiative, as we've said before, is known as SC2, which stands for Scaling CVI for a Safer Chicago. We started our support in the North Lawndale community as the first pilot 2 years ago, and we are now expanding to Austin, Humboldt Park, Garfield Park, and Little Village, with Inglewood and New City also in the pipeline. This past February, we first announced SC2 and our joint goal with the Civic Committee to raise $100 million. Sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it? But today I am proud to say that we have reached that first milestone. Some of our donors are here in the audience, and so we thank you. I would ask that you give them a round of applause because they have come through. And we thank each of you for your participation, your support, and most importantly, your partnership. But we know it does not stop there. We are not done. While $100 million sounds like a lot, it is not enough to support these communities, and we know it will take much more. Going forward, we are determined to help bring CVI to scale in every community where it is needed, and to make CVI a permanent feature of Chicago's public safety strategy. There is no single answer to gun violence. We know this. We need effective policing. We need CVI. We need other elements of PSPC's agenda, better gun policies, more investment in high-risk youth, and community building initiatives like the ones we fund every year. We also need other essential parts of a comprehensive agenda that the Civic Committee is working towards. All of this comes together to reduce and ultimately our goal to eliminate gun violence. Chicago is our home. It's my home, born and raised. And we are in this for the long haul. We will do whatever it takes, and we will not stop until children and families are able to live in communities without fear, trauma, and violence. Our community partners and frontline workers are doing the hard work each and every day. They are putting their lives on the line, and we are grateful to them. There is no amount of thank you that we could express our gratitude to them for the work that they are doing. So we appreciate you all for being here today. This crowd is tremendous, and let's continue to work together to create safer and more peaceful communities.
Thank you so much, Esther. It's now my honor to invite Eric Smith to come up, who's the vice chair of BMO and the co-chair of the Civic Committee's Public Safety Task Force. As I said, my personal fear was when Jim Crown tragically passed. It's a huge loss for his family and for the city. This work would end. The opposite has happened. It's been redoubled. It's because Eric and Mark Hoplamazian and so many others have stepped up. In Chicago, one of its best assets is the Civic Committee, the civic community. When they come together, great things happen. So Eric, I want to thank you so much for stepping up and leading. All yours. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and thanks to Esther and to Arne. Special thanks also to Governor Pritzker and to Mayor Brandon Johnson for their leadership, and a special thanks to Crown Family Foundations for hosting us here this afternoon. A little over a year ago, the late Jim Crown announced a comprehensive 5-point plan on behalf of the business community to help address the crisis of gun violence here in Chicago. The first commitment was to raise $100 million to invest in scaling community violence intervention organizations in order to expand programming in up to 7 neighborhoods across Chicago. As Esther shared, we're very pleased to have now met that initial milestone, and we're deeply grateful for all of our donors, many of whom are here today. We have obviously representation from the Crown Family Foundation, the Pritzker Family Foundation, the Su-Ling Jin Foundation, the Chicago Community Trust, Chuck Lewis, John Rogers and Ariel, PNC, Northern Trust, McDonald's, BMO Harris Bank, Allstate, ITW, and the list goes on. And I'd like to give each of them a round of applause for the very generous support. Likewise, we're grateful to our elected officials for their support and confidence. This partnership between philanthropy, business, community, and government is unique and powerful, and we know that it will help make our city safer and our state stronger. I also want to say a quick word of thanks to the consulting firm BCG. which has supported the work pro bono. And the BCG team has done an exceptional job to help us in analyzing the root causes of violent crime so that through collaboration and partnership, we could then develop and begin to implement a transformational plan of action to invest in underserved communities. In addition to Pillar 1, which calls for us supporting CVI, the Civic Committee's Public Safety Task Force is equally focused on our other 4 pillars, including Pillar 2, which is hiring CVI graduates, and that work has actually begun. Pillar 3 is hiring from the communities facing extreme levels of gun violence. And doing so, we're partnering with others like the Corporate Coalition to help make that happen. Pillar 4 is investing in those communities. And this is a long-term strategy, but it's critically important, and we look forward to sharing more details with you regarding the key initiatives. And last, Pillar 5 is supporting efforts to modernize and strengthen local policing. Here again, the work has begun, and we're grateful to Superintendent Snelling and the Chicago Police Department for their commitment to promoting effective law enforcement, accountability, and trust. We've been fundraising to support all of this work as well, and we'll provide updates on our progress in the future. But one thing is clear: the business community is all in on public safety, which is priority number 1. In order for our city and state to grow and thrive, we must reduce gun violence. We cannot ask police to do this alone. All of us must be part of the solution. And I believe it was the great Daniel Burnham who said it best when he inspired Chicago's leaders to make no little plans, because they have no magic to stir men's blood and probably will not themselves be realized. So thanks again to everyone for your support. We have a lot of hard work ahead, and we're eager to move forward with our shared commitment to make Chicago one of the safest cities to work and live, and a thriving city that works for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric. And I just want to channel Derek here that we're here to celebrate hitting a milestone. We are just getting in the game. We have so much hard work ahead of us. We have so much more money to raise. It's a huge accomplishment to get to this point. But again, to state the obvious, coming out this weekend, we're nowhere near where we need to be, and just appreciate the sense of momentum. We need to keep building on that. Now I'd like to bring up I would say partner in crime, but that's not the right thing to say in this audience. So just say my partner, Bryan, who's Executive Director of Metropolitan Peace Initiatives. What they have done to start to scale this work in neighborhoods has given us a blueprint of how to do this, how they're training frontline workers to really professionalize them has been extraordinary. I'm so thankful for your leadership and partnership. Bryan.
So thank you for having me. Thank you for having us. I want to echo the thanks to our donors to get us to this milestone. I want to thank you to our public and private sector partners that helped us get to this point. I want to really focus on how we got here. People talk about 8 years ago. Well, not only did the foundation community come together, but local providers got together and decided they were going to stick together in the effort of us tackling this public safety challenge. And it's really the effort for them to stick together, sacrifice their own individual interests in terms of having donations from foundations that they were getting individually. The foundations pooled their money together to go deep on a couple of initiatives, and Communities Partner for Peace and Ready Chicago were launched 8 years ago. And the fact that we stuck together and kept that coalition together is really why we're here today. It's much easier for us to go to the private sector and the public sector when at the community level, we've stuck together, we've proven our case, and we have a coalition and backing of people to back what we're trying to do. But it starts with the collective unity at the community level. And so we had outreach, we had case management, victim services, we have a place-based strategy that we all got together, and then we've iterated on that and added behavioral health services, added workforce development, added civil legal aid to the mix. We've built the Metropolitan Peace Academy, and if you haven't seen it yet, you gotta see it. We started off in Northeastern at Kennedy King. We've been outside at the Park District, and now we finally have a home because that is one of the jewels of the work that we've done. So we have a standard of practice across our city of people who are putting their lives on the line on a daily basis to make our city a safer city. And we wanted to do something special for them in creating a very welcoming space, because none of this works without our outreach workers, the people who put their lives on the line on a daily basis. And we have to, yeah. We have to invest in them, not only professionally, but personally, because all of our outreach workers are the story that we want to tell. People who have lived the life in their local communities. Most of them are returning citizens. Most of the time, this outreach job is the first real job they've had. And that is the story of Chicago, a comeback story, a story of resilience, and a story of triumph. And today, we're going to move the ball forward in making our city the safest city in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vaughn. I'm going to introduce the superintendent briefly and then ask him to come up and introduce the mayor, because their partnership is critical. The state's been amazing, but we as a city, we have to own this, and having their collective leadership is so important. I'm going to introduce him something you guys probably don't know, and we do public events like this, and they are important, but I think they're arguably the least important thing we do. It's all the little stuff we do day to day that changes things. He doesn't know, I know this, probably none of you in the room know this, but I'll just say it, coming out of this horrific weekend, 17 killed, over 100 shot. On Monday, he took time to honor a partner of his who was killed in the line of duty 14 years ago, named Thor. They trained together at the police academy, police training academy. And he died 14 years ago. Could easy to say, let's let that go. Easy to deal with all the real crises facing the city. But he took time out to go honor his fallen partner. And the only reason I know that is his widow is a friend of ours. And so just away from the spotlight, away from all this, that's the kind of man this police chief is. Please welcome Superintendent Snelling.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. First thing I'd like to say to Arne, it shows your commitment that you're here. You know, I just heard your loss. My condolences, but even through that loss, you're still here because this is important to you. That says a lot about the work and your dedication to this effort, so I'd like to applaud you for that. I'd also like to thank the Crown family for hosting. Eric Smith, I mean, you know, what can I say about Eric Smith? We've had several meetings, and his dedication to this cause and raising the amount of money that he was able to raise for this is just amazing. Derek, you know, we've had multiple conversations, and I know your dedication to the cause also. So, Derek Douglas, I definitely appreciate you. Civic Committee as a whole and the work that's being done. Mayor Johnson, thank you for being here. I know you're concerned about everything that's going on in the communities. We have multiple conversations about the safety of our city and our citizens within this city, our neighborhoods, and the importance of protecting our children, because we have to protect our children. Governor Pritzker, thank you for being here, and thank you for your dedication to this cause of making sure that our neighborhoods are safe. I'd also like to thank everyone here in attendance and the entire panel here. I won't spend too much time. I just want to talk about a couple of issues, and there were some things that were brought up. The tragedy that happened at 71st and Woodlawn, where two mothers and an 8-year-old child were murdered. You also had 2 other children in that home who were also shot, still fighting for their lives. There was also a 1-year-old there. Everybody needs to understand this. And luckily, the 1-year-old was not harmed. That 1-year-old was drenched in blood. Now, I say that because I want everybody to feel that. It's different when I tell you about it. It's different when you hear about it. But it really hits home when you see it, when you can feel it, when you can touch it. And then you start to understand the importance of this type of work. There are people out there, and I see some people in this room that I've done work with out there, and they've done some great work. And there are people out there now who are not in this room right now who are out there doing great work. We have to work together. I've said this a million times. The police cannot do this alone. A lot of this that you're seeing right now is not necessarily a police or law enforcement issue. This is a societal issue. This is an issue that's ailing communities. Those communities need resources. And the people in this room here today have taken a huge step in providing those resources for these communities. So what I will tell you is this: as the Chicago Police Department, we're going to be here to make sure that we're working in partnership with you. I don't want to go this alone. I don't want my officers to go this alone. And bigger than that, I don't want you to go this alone. We have to do this together. And if we're not working together, we're failing. I refuse to allow us to fail. So any opportunity that myself and the Chicago Police Department has to work with anyone in this room to keep this city safe and to help our communities that are seriously, seriously suffering from violent crime, we will be there 100%. And you have my promise on that. So again, the most important thing that we have to do right now is we have to protect our children. It never gets any easier. 32 years where I've seen violence, gun violence, I've seen murdered human beings, children. It never gets any easier. So hopefully we can help it get better. So I look forward to working with everyone in the room. And I'd just like to say thank you to each and every one of you for your dedication to trying to keep this city safe. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the Mayor of the City of Chicago, Mayor Johnson.
Thank you, Superintendent Snelling, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Arne Duncan, for your commitment and love and dedication to the people of Chicago. And you have, of course, our deepest condolences to the Crown family in this beautiful building. It's given me ideas of how I'm going to redecorate in my second term. So. Thank you for your leadership and the legacy of Jim. Of course, Derek, you've been an incredible friend and partner over the course of my first year in office. And Eric and Mark and to all of those who have contributed to the efforts. Of course, to my colleagues, there are a couple of here that are joining me, Alderman Mike Rodriguez, our Vice Mayor, Alderman Walter Burnett. Thank you both for your leadership in being here. To the state reps, state senators, the Speaker of the House, Senate President, and thank you, Governor, for your leadership and your dedication to the people of Illinois and, quite frankly, the people of this country. And I'm truly grateful that we are gathering here today to reaffirm our commitment to work together to stop violence. Because as been stated, and as I've said repeatedly, it is going to take all of us. In order for us to have safe communities, all of us have to put in real work. And let me express my sincere gratitude to the individuals and the organizations who are making the critical investments, again, to prevent violence. But also let me provide my deepest appreciation for those who are showing up on the front lines every single day. I also want to thank again just the people of Chicago for recognizing that this is a moment and an opportunity for us to build a collective response to violence in this city. And I'm confident that the investments that we are celebrating today will have a direct and positive impact on the lives of Chicagoans and the communities in which they live in. This announcement comes, of course, at a very critical time. This weekend was brutal, was harsh. But let me remind people today that the pain and the suffering that the people of Chicago have endured over decades, these are not just numbers or headlines. These are real lives, our neighbors, our co-workers. There are people who are waking up today who won't wake up to a mother, a daughter, son, aunt, uncle. These people deserve justice. And we will do everything in our power to make sure that we are healing and bringing closure to their families and to the communities at large. This violence does not happen in a vacuum, however. It happens because generations of Chicagoans were disinvested in, disenfranchised, and neglected, and dare I say, intentionally. But we know the solutions of our challenges. That is the gospel today. we have an answer. It will take deep, sustained investments in our people, giving them access to more housing, making sure that they have fully funded neighborhood schools, increased job opportunities, youth programming, and so much more. Everything the people need to live and to succeed in this city. There's nothing that we should withhold from them. The Chicago Department of Public Health issued an RFP seeking hospitals and community-based violence intervention organizations to deliver wraparound services to victims of gun violence who are at risk of repeating violent injury. And supporting victims of violence is an important component of this work. That's why my office is expanding and improving upon programs that assist victims with finances and mental health and so much more. But additionally, we have invested $100 million as part of the fiscal year 2024 into CVI programs, gender-based violence intervention, and reentry programs. It has been rightfully pointed out that unfortunately, that only 15 to 20% of estimated 20,000 highest promised individuals are actually reached through CVI. And so we know that CVI programming actually works, and so we have to do what works. I'll close with this. I'm so proud of the members of SC2, the steering committee, helping to deliver these investments and to provide the type of change that these communities need who have been suffering from systemic violence for ages. And our partnership in this mission is critical. Government cannot do it alone. Community violence interrupters cannot do it alone. The police certainly cannot do it alone. But in order for us to achieve a lasting peace, it requires all of us to lean in. It's unfortunate, though, that we live in a society in which Black death, where economies have been built around Black death. Thank you to the people of Chicago for stepping up and saying in this moment that we have had enough. The tragedy began before the bullets were fired. The tragedy began the fact that we have AK-47s on the streets of the city of Chicago. The tragedy, of course, is the fact that we do not have enough to really fully provide our people with the quality of life that they deserve. And that's why it takes all of us to make sure that we are providing immediate responses to the challenges. But we have to invest in the root causes of violence in order for us to transform this city, because that's ultimately what it's going to take in order for us to build a better, stronger, safer city. We have to transform it. We had a chance 60 years ago to invest in the root causes, and it was mocked. One of the most profound things ever said by an elected official was Governor George Wallace, where he mocked President Johnson. When President Johnson said we have to get at the root causes. And he said that people like President Johnson believe that we have crime in this country because a 10-year-old did not have enough watermelon to eat. It's not enough to just say it's enough. Where your heart and your treasure are aligned, then we know we are working collectively to ensure a safe Chicago. And with that, I'm grateful to have partners at the state level, State Representative Justin Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Great crowd. I'm Illinois State Representative Justin Slaughter. As a state representative that represents the far south side of Chicago that's very close to this work, let me just say thank you to the Civic Committee. Arne Duncan and I bumped into each other just the other day, and we discussed how elated we are that this partnership wasn't just lip service. It wasn't a symbolic, ceremonial partnership, but we've actually gotten going on this. The fact that the business community, corporate sector, private sector has already came together to raise $100 million for this effort is outstanding. And please, let's give them another round of applause. At the root of what the state is doing here is something called the RSPA, the Reimagined Public Safety Act. First, I want to lift up, I guess, the state leaders of this initiative. What we did was create the first of its kind statewide Office of Firearm Prevention. Director Quiana Bell is here somewhere. Please raise your hand. Also, the birthday boy, the former director of this office is here, Chris Patterson. This has been an outstanding effort. It's made its way all the way to the White House. Vice President Harris now spearheading that effort nationally out of the White House. They have now created an Office of Firearm Prevention. And particularly, I want to lift up the efforts of Speaker Welch. He has been relentless, tirelessly working on not just establishing the objectives of the Reimagined Public Safety Act, but putting forth the effort to sustain this phenomenal effort. And also I want to recognize our partners over in the Senate. My brother, you'll hear from him in a second, Senator Peters, our chief budgeteer over there, Senator Sims, and also Senate President Harmon for the work that they've done as we collaborate in continuing to push this effort forward. And of course, I want to thank Governor Pritzker for his vision, his wherewithal to be a leader, to provide an approach that is going to address root causes of violence, and to also look at these issues through the lens of it being a public health crisis. And so as you look at funding being scarce, COVID money running out, it's our governor who is prioritizing this issue when it comes to putting forth the resources that we need for RSPA. And it's not just a Chicago or state of Illinois thing. We have all really set out to become a national model, to put forth best practices as it relates to addressing this public health crisis. And so, speaking of best practices, many of you may want to know what exactly is the Reimagined Public Safety Act. There's a few components. One is, let's actually understand what works, right? What are these best practices, right? So, I want to lift up Arne Duncan and the team at CRED, especially when you look at practices like FLIP, and I may get the acronym wrong, flatlining increases peace. Did I do a good job with that? Okay, flatlining increases peace. We don't want to continue to just throw money out there. How do we look at being financially responsible as we tackle this issue? The second thing is intergovernmental partnerships. You see state leaders up here, you see our mayor, our superintendent. This is going to take an intergovernmental partnership to address these issues. And you'll be hearing more about that. I also want to lift up the work of Cook County and Cook County Board President Tony Pretwinkle. But the Government Alliance for Safe Communities. You will hear a lot more about this. And this is what the community wants. This is what the community needs. They want to see government working together in this effort. A third piece of this is what you see here today, public-private partnerships. And we can't emphasize enough, we don't take this lightly, the corporate sector getting involved in such a complex issue means so very much to us and to this city and to this state. And so we're just so proud and thankful that we've embarked upon SC2. And then lastly, and I'll close with this, a bit of really great news. And I don't know if your phones were blowing up, but just this morning, the federal government has approved our state's 1115 Medicaid demonstration waiver. So now this work becomes Medicaid eligible. Yeah, no, this is a huge, huge thing for the state of Illinois. Governor, we thank you for your leadership on this. Again, setting the bar for the country. But these are the sort of innovative, strategic approaches, right, that we want to take as we continue to embark down this path. Thank you so very much to the Civic Committee. Now we turn the page to a different chapter, and it's not just about violence prevention. That's great. If an individual can wake up and then end their day not committing violence, great. That is a great start. But now we turn the page to more creative, innovative interventions that facilitate and allow individuals to become positive, productive individuals. So very grateful to where we are. We have a lot of work to do, and we stand here at the ready to continue to spend important, critical time and energy and effort to push this along. With that said, I want to bring up my brother, Senator Peters.
Good afternoon. I want to thank the Civic Committee and leaders who are working on the ground. When I look around this room and see how packed it is, it just shows how much people care about making our city and our state as safe as possible. I fundamentally, deeply care and believe that we can bring safety to every zip code in this city, in this county, and in this state. And I think that oftentimes when we talk about safety, we talk about it like it's rocket science. But I actually think it's somewhat simple. You give people a good job, you give people good housing, you give people good schools, you give people the opportunity to easily get from point A to point B, groceries and food on their table, kids who have their backpacks full. You have a safe city. You have a safe state. And I fundamentally believe that this room and what we're working on is the foundation of that safety. That CVI is something that we build on top of. That when I want someone to be able to say, my dad did this work and I want to do this work. I want us to use our imagination to expand it, to say that it's not just the fact that we're disrupting the cycles of violence, but we're going into mental health care. We're going into the care field. We are talking about generational trauma in the form of generational PTSD. And we've been doing public safety the same way for 30 to 40 years, and every summer we have the same complaints about what we see on July 4th weekend. And I'll be honest with you, that ticks me off. And I think that we are at a unique opportunity with these leaders, with you all as leaders, to turn the page to a 21st century safety that lifts up every community and lifts up people. We need to remove the depressing down and sadness that comes every summer and see it as an opportunity for hope, to believe in people, to lift them up. And so, I have to say, as the sponsor of the RPSA and to be able to work with these people, it's something that I feel great about in terms of legislative work. But what I care most about, and we have Clarice and Associates here, is I like to go directly to the people doing this work and talking to them about what they're going through and to hear about their story. And every time you hear their story, you hear about what they've went through in life and how they want to see change. And I sit with it. Sometimes it's the toughest conversations, but it gives me hope because it tells me we have something we can build on. And so I'm honored to be here. I'm grateful for everybody doing this work. I know we had a tough July 4th weekend, but what I truly believe is that we have a unique opportunity to make this city the safest city in this country and to make this state the safest state in this country. Thank you. I'm going to turn over to a true champion, LG Sims.
Well, good afternoon. First, let me start by saying, Arne, thank you for being here. Our condolences to you and your family on your tremendous loss. I mean, the loss of a parent is never easy, but the fact that you are here despite that loss says a lot about not only your character, but about your mother's investment in you. So I want to thank you for being here, my friend. And I know, again, we're all here with you and expressing our condolences. What a difference partnership makes. When you have when you have the ability to have folks who work together. I can't say enough thank yous to the Crown family for hosting, but also to the Civic Committee for the work that they have done to lean into this work. It's one thing to say you're going to be on the front lines. It's one thing to say you're going to do something, but it's something very different to actually do it. So to the business community, thank you. For all of the individuals who, we are celebrating the $100 million that have been raised, but as you all know, in Springfield, I work with our state budget. So I want more money. I want a bigger partnership, because we've got a lot of work to do. You know, we've got work to do on the south side of Chicago. We've got work to do on the west side of Chicago. We've got work to do on the east side of Peoria. We've got work to do in Springfield. We've got work to do all across this state. So the efforts that you are making are not just a demonstration for the efforts that we're taking, the impact that we're making here in Chicago, but it's the impact that we can make all across this state. So I thank you for your efforts. I thank you for being here. I thank you for what you have done to date, but also what you've done today, what you're going to do tomorrow. Because the work didn't end today. We can take the victory lap today, but as we've all seen, this weekend was a particularly difficult one. And that's after a long line of difficult weekends. I was there as the family celebrated the life of Reverend Larry Newman, Officer Newman. Down the street from the church that he served and the community that he lived and the community that he served diligently, his life was taken. And that's why it's important for us to come together. You know, as I was sitting here today, I was thinking about, you know, the efforts that we've taken to date, and Governor Pritzker, you know, what a difference a governor makes. To have the courage to stand up and say, gun violence is a public health crisis. Despite what others might tell you, despite the folks might tell you that, you know, you have to have access to handguns. I was out walking my dog recently, and I encountered a 70-plus-year-old man who talked about the fear that he experiences just living in the city. And he says, I've never owned a handgun, but I am contemplating buying a gun to protect myself and my wife. And I said to him, we don't want you to have to go and buy a handgun to feel safe. I said, you have individuals, and this is where I have to thank Mayor Johnson and Superintendent Snelling for standing up and leaning into this work. I said, you have officers who want you to be safe. You have a community who wants you to be safe, and you don't have to turn to a handgun to solve that problem. But far too many people believe that they do. And we have to make sure that that's not the only option. That's why I'm so proud of this initial success. But the success isn't done. You know, there's an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. That's the only way we're going to go far, is going together. Business, community, government, the philanthropic sector, all working together for the common good. We've achieved a great deal, but we are not done. As I close, I think back to some of the most powerful warriors the world has ever known, the Maasai tribe out of Africa. And the call that the Maasai warriors would say to one another, they would say, Kasiri and Ngira, and it would say, and how are the children? If the children and everything were well, they would say the children are well. If the children were not well, the response would be that the children are in danger. Our children are in danger. We need to stand up, and I would say that the only warriors who are rivaling the Maasai tribe right now is the Civic Committee and the warriors of the Civic Committee, who are standing up and saying our children are out well, and we are going to do something about it. So thank you for your efforts. Thank you for the work that you have done. Thank you for being partners in this work, but thank you for also leaning into equity across the city, making sure that the south and the west sides of the city of Chicago have what they need and the investments they need to be successful. And with that, it is my honor to bring forward my partner in progress, the leader of our chamber, someone who believes in this work, someone who has dedicated this work, Senate President Don Harmon.
When you are the 11th of 13 speakers, you realize that everything that there is to say may already have been said, but it hasn't been said by everybody who needs to say it. So congratulations to everyone on the success, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. The reminders of why we need to press forward, unfortunately, come all too often. Everyone's mentioned the weekend. Mayor, I know how heavily that weighs on you from our earlier conversations. It should weigh on all of us. But you all have lent your resources and your voices to a growing chorus that proclaims enough. And as the mayor said, saying enough is not enough. You've lent your expertise and your experience to a growing effort that demands, we will make a difference. I want to echo something I heard the mayor say earlier. We're not going to tolerate in one community what would never be tolerated in another. In my neighborhood, the children of Austin have the same value and potential as the children across the street in Oak Park. The same is true everywhere. A life cut short by violence is an unbearable crime and a human tragedy regardless of zip code. We all know that we didn't arrive in this predicament overnight. Decades of neglect, indifference, and misplaced priorities have allowed violence to take root and grow. There is unfortunately no overnight fix. Thankfully, we're surrounded by people committed to the long haul, committed to finding and providing the resources to invest in communities, invest in programs, and most importantly, invest in people. We have a working partnership among Governor Pritzker, Speaker Welch, and myself committed to responsible and responsive budgeting. And we have colleagues like Senator Peters, Senator Sims, Senator Villanueva, who I think was here earlier, united in their ongoing advocacy to end the violence. We have shifted our priorities to recognize failures of the past, while at the same time understanding the world only spins forward and that hindsight will not solve our problems. There's a long road ahead to a better future, but because of you, the journey has begun and there is newfound hope. So thank you for this historic commitment to your powerful partnership and our shared goal of a better Chicago for everyone who calls this great city home. I tried to give him a promotion when I introduced him earlier this morning, but next up in the batting order is the Speaker of the Illinois House, my friend and colleague, Speaker Chris Welch.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would do my best to be brief, but it really is an honor to be here with all of you, to be here with my friend and brother Arne Duncan, Governor Pritzker, Mayor Johnson, Superintendent Snelling, my colleague across the hall, Senate President Don Harmon, Derek Douglas, and the Civic Committee, and all of you in the business community, the Crown Family Foundations, to my good friend, my fraternity brother, Chairman Justin Slaughter, to all of you, dignitaries and guests, thank you all for being here. I was thinking about what I was going to say here. My staff prepared me some remarks, but I folded them up, and I'm just going to speak from the heart. Because July 7th, 1984, my family's lives were changed forever. My aunt, Joyce Ann Mullen, was murdered when she left our church on the west side of Chicago. 40 years later, that murder has never been solved. She was murdered by gun violence on the streets of Chicago. And here we are, 40 years later, 40 years to the day, almost, 19 lives were senselessly lost on the streets of Chicago. How many more lives are we going to lose? All of us in this room hope that someday that number will be zero. Every single day that I go to work, it is my hope and my prayer that that number will be zero. What's going on here today reminds me of a book that I have given to our caucus that I talk about regularly, because I want you all to understand the mindset that I have every day I go to work as the Speaker of the House. The book is called The Infinite Game, written by an author named Simon Sinek. The infinite game is different than a finite game. A finite game, we all know it when we see it. It's basketball, it's baseball, it's football. When you play a finite game, you play to win. You know, you want to win that game today. You know, that's your mindset. They call it a finite mindset. When we go to work every day, when we get to walk into that beautiful Capitol, when the mayor gets to walk into that beautiful building called City Hall, we're playing an infinite game. Our game is going to go on and on and on. Illinois has been here for almost 206 years. I'm the 70th Speaker of the House. There's going to be a 71st, a 72nd, and so on. It's going to go on and on and on. When you play an infinite game, you're not playing to win. We're not trying to beat somebody. We're playing an infinite game to be better. We're trying to leave the city of Chicago and the state of Illinois better than we found it. And so every day that I go to work, we're trying to find policies and practices that's going to make this great state better. And I got to tell you, when we did the Reimagine Public Safety Act, that's one of those policies I know we got right. And every day that I go to work, I'm going to continue to try to find ways to help get it right, to try to make things better. But as we saw this past weekend, we have a whole lot more work to do. We will only get better when we're working together. We are stronger together. And so that is why it's so important that we are here today, all of us, government, business, the philanthropic community, because in this infinite game, we are stronger when we do it together. That $100 million you have raised is a hell of a start. It's going to go a long way to helping to make things better in this great state. But we have a lot more work to do. We have to commit each and every day that we wake up and go to the jobs that we have, that we want to make things better for the people of this great state. Someone who's been doing it for 5 years, he's already made this state better than how he found it. But every day he goes to work, he's trying to find more ways to make it better. Please put your hands together and welcome my friend, Governor J.B. Pritzker.
Ooh, 13 of 13 speakers. That is who I am. I will try to be brief, but I will also begin perhaps on a positive note just to say this is a great city. We live in a great city. I'm a Chicagoan. I may be governor of the whole state. I live in this city. I love this city. And I love it in part because of who I see here and who you are and who we are collectively. We have violence interrupters here with us, people who are working on the ground to make our city better. We have philanthropists and philanthropies. We've got CEOs. We've got government leaders. We've got police. We've got Arne Duncan, who has dedicated his life to making sure that we are getting better every day in this city. I want to thank all of you. I want to thank all of you for being here together and for showing how great this city is just by your very presence here. I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to be here in part because I get an opportunity with some Crown family members in the room to say, Jim Crown was my friend. He was actually a friend to all of us, but he was a personal friend, a kind and decent person, and he is the one who stepped forward to say, I will help lead the Civic Committee. I will help lead the business community in helping to address gun violence in this city. It takes great people to do that. It takes a great person to do that, and we will miss him terribly. I want to thank the Crown family. I want to thank Crown Family Philanthropies. We have so many great philanthropic partners that are in the room that have helped to get this effort to $100 million. As many have said, we're not done yet, but it's an unbelievably great start. and it's a demonstration of this city coming together. It is what we do. If you think back to all the challenges that we've had over many years, this city pulls together. And that $100 million is just one indication of it. To the many community partners who are here, just want to say thank you for the work that you do every day. Keeping Illinoisans safe and protected is honestly one of the foremost obligations of those of us who get elected to public office, and certainly for my state administration. All of our priorities, from healthcare to education to economic development, well, they're contingent on our success in the pursuit of public safety. Everything else is drawn from our ability to have public safety. Fostering a state where each and every resident is free to live, work, and grow without fear for their safety or their lives. What happened over this last weekend, and I now understand there are 19 lives that were lost, 89 others that were injured, families suffering and torn apart. It's a tragic and painful reminder of the urgency of the work that we're here and all about, and how much more there is left to be done. Today, I take comfort, though, in this gathering, knowing that I'm in the company of smart, passionate, compassionate, dedicated people working to uplift and advance this mission. Not long ago, we brought together community and philanthropic and business leaders from every corner of the state to put forward a slate of unprecedented holistic reforms and investments, and it was called, and you've heard it before, the Reimagined Public Safety Act, which sought to improve the immediate safety and security of our communities while also finally addressing the root causes of violent crimes. If it was George Wallace that said, as the mayor said, that we shouldn't be looking at root causes, well, we know he was dead wrong about a lot of things. This is all built on the idea that violence prevention isn't only about policing and incarceration. It should be about education and employment. It has to be about human services and mental health services. It has to be about ensuring that people doing the work on the ground have the resources they need to lead the way forward. Central to our commitment is a historic expansion of community violence intervention programs. I had the great good fortune to sit with a number of leaders in the community violence intervention space who I learned a great deal from just listening. And one thing I learned, and this is very important for us all to keep in mind, is that over the years, these programs have been funded and then defunded, and then funded and then defunded. Sometimes it's defunded and then defunded. And the problem is that this is a year-round endeavor. So if you stop from one year to the next funding, guess what happens? People who are trained at this, people who are doing the work and know how to do this work, well, they have to go find something else to do. They're not going to do the work that we need them to do. We have to make sure that there's a base level of funding at all times. Yes, we need to surge funding when the needs are great, but we also need to make sure that when maybe not everybody's paying attention, the funds are there to keep these programs going. So let's keep that in mind. That is something that is up to us as government leaders. The business community is surging funding because we have such an incredible need right now, but we need to make sure that as those things ramp down over the years, that it never drops below a certain level, and that is a level to keep these programs going and going and going. CVI is where it's at. We have a lot of other tools, but CVI is what makes us reduce crime across the city of Chicago. If we can keep this going, we will succeed. The early returns on the approach have been promising. There's a Northwestern study that was published last November that found that those who had completed the CVI program were 73% less likely to be arrested for a violent crime in the following 2 years. I'm a believer in building on what works. And I'm very happy to be doing so still today and again tomorrow. These efforts have been bolstered by the state with the RPSA by a $250 million commitment. It's a multi-year investment that we made as state government. And then, of course, the additional $100 million that's now here from private philanthropy and the business community. I'm very proud of the coalition that we've put together, the dollars that we've put together to make all this work. There is still so much more to do, but just take pride in what's already been accomplished. It's an inspiring display of all that we can accomplish when we commit ourselves to a common goal. I believe that given the proper resources and support and opportunity, our communities can and will live in peace. I know I'm an optimist. I've always been an optimist. Even in the worst of times, we know that we can come out of this, and part of it is because we're Chicagoans. We know we have broad shoulders, right? We're the city of big shoulders. We know how to take a challenge and carry it and overcome it. So I just want to say to all of you, thank you. Thank you for your belief in the vision of overcoming the challenges that we have today, that we will overcome tomorrow, for committing your time and your resources to making that possible, for being here today. And thank you for listening to the unlucky 13th of 13 speakers today. Thank you.
There is no 14th. Thanks to all of you for your time. After a weekend like this, we sort of have two choices. We could throw up our hands, we could walk away, just say it is what it is, intractable, can't do anything about it, or we can redouble our efforts and work smarter and harder and more collaboratively. And honestly, for all of our speakers, for all of you here, all of you inspire me and give me hope. Thank you so much.